Marcelo Cardoso traced the precise, clean lines of the latest prototype, his brow furrowed in concentration. For 20 years, his life had been a testament to meticulous design, each element placed with intention, every curve deliberate. His industrial design firm was a respected name, his creations gracing homes and offices with their elegant functionality. And then there was Adriana, his wife. Their marriage, he'd always believed, was his masterpiece, a perfectly balanced composition of shared ambitions, quiet understanding, and a comfortable, unwavering routine. She was his muse, his partner, the soft counterpoint to his precise world. He'd often marveled at their domestic architecture, the way their lives fit together so seamlessly, like interlocking components. It was a structure he'd built with care, each brick laid with certainty. Even her annual trips, her wellness retreats, were accepted elements of their established rhythm. They were times of introspection for her, a period of recharging before she returned, invariably, with a renewed vibrancy that always struck him as, well, more radiant, more capable than before. He'd attributed it to the serene environments, the healthy practices, the rejuvenating effects of nature. He never questioned the subtle shift in her demeanor, the almost imperceptible sharpening of her intuition, or the way she sometimes moved with an uncanny grace that hinted at skills he couldn't quite place. It was merely part of her transformation, a detail he'd filed away as another facet of the woman he loved. He saw it as personal growth, an enrichment of her already captivating persona, a testament to their stable, flourishing life together. He was the architect of his success, and he was, he thought, the architect of his happiness, too. You've probably seen me. The guy you'd nod to in the grocery store aisle, the one who held the elevator door open without a second thought. A designer by trade, I had what most would call a perfectly ordinary life. A seemingly flawless marriage, a comfortable routine. But beneath that veneer of normalcy, something far more sinister was brewing. And somehow, without even trying, I became an expert at spotting falsehoods, at understanding how easily we can be manipulated, often without realizing it. I'm no hero, not by a long shot. But I learned some harsh lessons, the kind life only teaches you through experience. And if you think your life is a picture of calm and security, buckle up, because mine was turned upside down in a matter of days. I'm going to tell you everything, unfiltered, blow by blow. And I promise, you won't believe every single detail. It was merely part of her transformation, a detail I'd filed away as another facet of the woman I loved. I saw it as personal growth, an enrichment of her already captivating persona, a testament to our stable, flourishing life together. I was the architect of my success, and I was, I thought, the architect of my happiness, too. My days were filled with the precise lines and intentional palettes of design, translating abstract concepts into tangible forms. My evenings were a comfortable tableau, a shared meal, quiet conversation, the comforting weight of her head on my shoulder as we watched a film. Our home, a sanctuary of curated elegance, reflected this harmonious existence. I believed, with a certainty that now feels almost naive, that I had built something impenetrable, a fortress of shared trust and affection. Then came the subtle shifts, the almost imperceptible cracks in the foundation. They started small, easily dismissed as the everyday stresses of modern life. A forgotten anniversary, a hushed phone call quickly ended when I entered the room, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes that vanished as quickly as it appeared. I attributed these to her demanding career, to the usual ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. After all, we had built a life together, a solid structure that I was convinced could weather any storm. The thought of any deep-seated deception never even crossed my mind. My world was a neatly organized design board, and I prided myself on my ability to foresee and mitigate potential issues. This, however, was a design flaw I never anticipated. My wife, Adriana, was truly a remarkable woman. Everyone admired her, her sharp intellect, her striking beauty, her undeniable success. I, in my comfortable domesticity, saw her drive as simply part of her multifaceted personality. She had these periods. Times when she'd retreat, almost vanish, for a few days, returning with a different glow, a subtle shift in her demeanor that I, bless my oblivious heart, dismissed as the rejuvenating effects of a modern woman's self-care. I never questioned it, never probed. Why would I? I felt secure, rooted in our shared history, in the quiet rhythm of our days. It never occurred to me that these absences, these rituals as I now understand them, were more than just breaks from routine. They were deliberate, calculated pauses where the foundations of who I thought I knew were being meticulously dismantled and reconstructed. I was so caught up in the illusion of stability, in the narrative of a life well lived, that I missed the seismic shifts happening beneath the surface. The quiet moments in our home, once filled with comfortable silence, now held an unspoken tension I couldn't articulate. Adriana's conversations began to carry a new undercurrent, subtle hints that, in retrospect, were alarm bells I failed to heed. She'd talk about personal growth, about pushing boundaries, about shedding old skins. I'd nod along, offering a reassuring smile, thinking she was simply finding new hobbies, new ways to enrich her already rich life. Little did I know, these were not abstract philosophies, they were blueprints for my own impending transformation. The furor itself, when it finally arrived, was less a natural disaster and more a precisely orchestrated demolition. It swept away the familiar landscape of my life with an efficiency that was both terrifying and, in a strange way, validating. The signals I had ignored weren't just faint whispers, they were pronouncements, bold declarations of an impending change that I, in my comfortable blindness, had chosen to interpret as mere atmospheric disturbances. My contentment had become my cage, and the storm, while devastating, was also the only force powerful enough to shatter its bars. It was a harsh awakening, but one that forced me to confront the man I had become, a man who had allowed complacency to blind him to the subtle, yet profound, shifts in the very fabric of his existence. The prevailing societal narrative of female empowerment and the intense focus on self-discovery acted as a powerful anesthetic, dulling my perception. Adriana's retreats, with their alluring promises of self-awareness and personal growth, seemed to perfectly align with this zeitgeist. She'd return from these excursions brimming with what she termed innovative ideas for our intimate life, introducing peculiar breathing exercises that left me breathless, though not in the way one might expect. In my naive enthusiasm, I found it all exhilarating, basking in the glow of what I believed was my own virility, a seasoned lover even in my later years. Looking back now, with the clarity that only hindsight can provide, it's evident that my perceived triumphs were merely carefully orchestrated steps in a grander, insidious design. Her subtle personality alterations, the gradual emotional detachment that I so readily dismissed, these went unnoticed, overshadowed by my own self-congratulatory narrative. I was too engrossed in my own imagined prowess to observe the quiet erosion of our connection, the steady drift away that was happening beneath the surface. The insidious nature of her manipulation lay in its subtlety. Each insight gained, each new technique introduced, was a tiny brick laid in the foundation of my subjugation. She was adept at framing her desires and control as advancements in personal development, making me an active participant, even an enthusiastic one, in my own diminishment. The very things that I celebrated as signs of our evolving intimacy were, in reality, the mechanisms by which she was tightening her grip, ensuring my dependence and compliance. As these changes deepened, the machinery of her deception kept churning, silently and effectively. The more I embraced her innovations, the more I became ensnared in her web. My eagerness to please, my desire to keep pace with her perceived self-improvement, ironically made me more susceptible. I was so focused on being the best version of myself that I failed to see myself becoming less of myself, a mere pawn in her intricate game, a puppet whose strings she was expertly pulling. The illusion of shared growth was so convincing that I never questioned the direction we were truly heading. The day the bomb dropped felt like a punch to the gut. A message on her phone, a few stray words that sparked my suspicion. And then, the truth came crashing down, cruel and relentless. I wasn't the beloved husband, the lifelong partner. I was a subject of study, a test dummy used for, I don't know, clandestine experiments. The betrayal wasn't passionate, it was technical, cold, calculated. And the pain, my friend, was soul-shattering. Not just for the infidelity itself, but for the feeling of having been used, manipulated, made a fool of for so long. It was then that the designer in me awakened. And revenge, believe me, would be a work of art. The initial shock gave way to a simmering, strategic fury. I began to observe her with a new, analytical eye. Her routines, her digital footprint, the subtle shifts in her demeanor that I had previously dismissed as mere mood swings. My designer's mind, once focused on aesthetics and user experience, now turned to understanding her system. I needed to deconstruct her carefully crafted facade, to identify the vulnerabilities within her intricate design. Each glance, each overheard whisper, became a data point, meticulously catalogued and analyzed. I started noticing patterns in her communications, recurring themes in her online searches, and the peculiar timing of certain absences. It was like deciphering a complex algorithm. The more I understood, the more the full scope of her deception became terrifyingly clear. My own transformation began subtly. I started to curate my own online presence, not for her, but for myself. I revisited old passions, the ones I'd set aside in my quest to become the ideal partner. My wardrobe, once dictated by her suggestions, was re-examined and reassembled with a renewed sense of personal style. The goal wasn't to impress her, but to reclaim the essence of who I was before she started molding me. I found solace in the act of creation, sketching designs in a notebook, crafting intricate digital mock-ups in the dead of night. This was my therapy, my nascent rebellion, the first brushstrokes on the canvas of my retribution. The very skills that had made me so pliable were now being honed into weapons. The sheer audacity of her experiments, the clinical way she had treated our life together as a series of variables and outcomes, ignited a fire within me. It wasn't just about her infidelity anymore, it was about the intellectual insult. She had underestimated my capacity for observation, for strategic thinking. She had seen me as a passive recipient, a mere canvas for her manipulations. But every designer knows that a well-executed plan requires understanding the materials, anticipating the reactions, and ultimately, controlling the narrative. And I, the supposedly obsolete component, was about to become the architect of her downfall. My focus shifted from absorbing her influence to actively dissecting it, finding the critical flaws in her grand design, and preparing to exploit them with calculated precision. The fallout from the revelation was catastrophic. My marriage crumbled, my life imploded, and my self-worth evaporated. I felt adrift, utterly disoriented, unsure of whom to trust. The pain was amplified by the chilling realization that Adriana felt no remorse. To her, I was merely a pawn, a tool to achieve her sinister ambitions. Yet, a simmering rage, a thirst for retribution, became my unlikely allies, propelling me forward. I refused to be the broken victim, the pathetic figure in her narrative. Instead, I resolved to harness my intellect and creativity, to expose her elaborate deception and ensure she paid for her transgressions. And believe me, revenge promised to be exquisitely satisfying. The initial shock gave way to a grim determination. I began meticulously analyzing every interaction, every subtle manipulation, searching for the cracks in her facade. Adriana's carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of lies, was surprisingly fragile. She had underestimated my capacity for observation, my ability to perceive the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the carefully chosen words that masked her true intentions. I started to reconstruct the timeline of events, not with the raw emotion of betrayal, but with the cold logic of an investigator. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, became a brushstroke in the portrait of her deceit. My focus narrowed. I needed to understand her endgame, not just the immediate deception, but the larger scheme she had orchestrated. What were her ultimate goals? Who else was involved, if anyone? These were questions that gnawed at me, fueling my drive to uncover the complete truth. I realized that simply exposing her wouldn't be enough. I needed to dismantle her power, to ensure she could never again inflict such devastation on another soul. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but the prospect of dismantling her carefully crafted illusion, of revealing the ugly truth for all to see, provided a potent, albeit dark, sense of purpose. I began to document everything, creating an intricate web of information, a testament to her perfidy, patiently waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of my lungs. Adriana's so-called retreats weren't spiritual getaways, They were clandestine gatherings for an esoteric sect, steeped in bizarre rituals and morally dubious practices. My blood ran cold as I pieced together the fragmented whispers and cryptic clues. She hadn't simply strayed, she had been ensnared, a pawn in their insidious game, essentially an operative deployed into my life. The deception was far grander than I had ever imagined. I wasn't just a betrayed husband, I was the victim of a meticulously orchestrated conspiracy, a grand-scale manipulation designed to ensnare and exploit. A new mission, born from the ashes of my shattered reality, ignited within me, to expose their deception, to pull back the curtain and reveal the rot beneath, and to safeguard others from their deceptive allure. Vengeance, once a raw and personal wound, now possessed a higher calling, a crusade for truth. With this newfound clarity, my actions shifted from personal hurt to strategic planning. My focus was no longer solely on Adriana, but on the shadowy organization that had corrupted her. I started meticulously collecting every scrap of evidence, cross-referencing dates, times, and names. The digital trail was a goldmine, filled with veiled references and encrypted messages that, with persistent effort, began to yield their secrets. I learned about their recruitment methods, their psychological tactics, and the devastating impact they had on individuals who fell under their sway. Each discovery fueled my resolve, transforming my anger into a cold, calculated determination. I was no longer just trying to reclaim my own dignity, I was on a mission to dismantle a force that preyed on vulnerability. The complexity of their operation became increasingly apparent. They operated in plain sight, cloaking their activities in spiritual jargon and promises of enlightenment, making them all the more dangerous. Adriana, I now understood, was their most effective tool because of our shared history, our intimacy. She had been groomed to exploit trust, to sow seeds of doubt and discord with an uncanny precision that chilled me to the bone. This knowledge was a heavy burden, but also a weapon. It allowed me to anticipate their moves, to understand their motivations, and to begin formulating a plan that would not only expose them but also offer a path towards healing for those they had harmed. The fight was far from over, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope, a certainty that justice, though arduous, was attainable. With each new revelation, my anger solidified into unwavering resolve. I enlisted the help of an investigator, a trusted friend who was a former police officer, to aid me in uncovering the cult's deepest secrets. What he unearthed was far more chilling than I had anticipated, evidence of brainwashing, sophisticated mind control techniques, and initiation rituals that bordered on the utterly insane. It became clear that Adriana, unknowingly, had been transformed into a mere puppet, expertly manipulated by these individuals. She was being utilized to ensnare new victims and to skillfully twist the dynamics of their personal relationships. And I, the test subject, was the ideal guinea pig for them to refine their insidious methods of control and manipulation. Revenge, at this point, was no longer just a desire, it was a matter of personal honor. My friend's findings painted a grim picture of how effectively the cult operated, not just on an emotional level but on a psychological one. They had a playbook, a set of tactics designed to erode individuality and foster absolute dependence. Adriana's role was crucial to their recruitment drive, her seemingly genuine warmth and sincerity, now understood as a cultivated facade, drew people in. She was the bait, the friendly face that masked a far more sinister agenda. My own experience, feeling like I was being subtly steered and questioned in ways that felt increasingly invasive, now made terrifying sense. I wasn't just a target of their interest, I was an experiment, a subject under observation as they tested the limits of their influence. The data my friend compiled was meticulously detailed, including recorded interactions, witness testimonies from former members who had managed to escape, and intercepted communications. It was a disturbing chronicle of psychological abuse and systematic indoctrination. The absurd rituals he mentioned were, in reality, elaborate psychological conditioning exercises designed to break down defenses and foster a sense of belonging that was entirely dependent on the cult's approval. He explained how they exploited vulnerabilities, isolating individuals from their support systems and gradually replacing their beliefs and values with their own. My prior suspicions were now confirmed with undeniable proof. transforming my fear into a fierce determination to dismantle their operation from the inside out. The revenge plan had been meticulously crafted, much like a design project. Every detail, every step, was conceived to inflict maximum impact and expose the truth to the widest possible audience. I leveraged social media, the press, even the police, to expose the cult's activities and warn of the dangers of manipulation. And Adriana, seeing her world crumble, tried to stop me, to threaten me, to manipulate me once more. But it was too late. I was no longer the test subject, the puppet in her hands. I was the designer of my own life, and I was determined to write a happy ending for the story. The digital threads I had woven began to tighten. Anonymous posts, backed by irrefutable evidence, flooded the internet. Screenshots of incriminating conversations, financial records that detailed the cult's exploitative practices, and personal testimonies from former members painted a damning picture. The initial skepticism from the public and authorities slowly gave way to outrage as the scope of Adriana's deception became undeniable. Journalists, hungry for a story that resonated with so many who had felt unheard, picked up the narrative, amplifying it across various platforms. Adriana's reaction was swift and desperate. Her attempts to discredit me were transparent and pathetic, easily countered by the sheer volume of proof I had compiled. She resorted to veiled threats, whispers in the digital ether meant to instill fear. But the fear had long since been replaced by a steely resolve. Her manipulation tactics, once so effective, now felt like the desperate thrashings of a cornered animal. I had learned her playbook, understood her weaknesses, and was no longer susceptible to her charm or her intimidation. The authorities, initially hesitant to intervene, could no longer ignore the overwhelming evidence. Investigations were launched, subpoenas were issued, and the carefully constructed facade of the cult began to crack. Seeing the walls closing in, Adriana unleashed a final, desperate gambit. She attempted to isolate me again, to pull me back into the web of control that had ensnared me for so long. But this time, I saw the threads for what they were, fragile and easily broken. My focus shifted from dismantling the cult to ensuring its complete and utter downfall, and more importantly, to securing justice for those who had been harmed. The legal proceedings were arduous, a testament to the cult's deep roots and insidious influence. Yet, with each witness who stepped forward, with each piece of evidence presented, the truth shone brighter, leaving no room for Adriana's manufactured realities. The world was finally seeing the puppet master for what she truly was. The culmination of my quest for retribution wasn't a silent, personal victory, but a resounding, public unmasking. It was a theatrical revelation, a dramatic unveiling of truths that sent seismic waves of shock and disbelief through the assembled crowd. I laid bare the insidious secrets of the sect, the intricate web of manipulation woven by Adriana, and the disturbing, bizarre rituals that had captivated and controlled so many. Every sordid detail, meticulously documented and presented, painted a picture far removed from the fabricated piety they had projected. The impact was nothing short of devastating. The sect, once a powerful force shrouded in secrecy, was thoroughly exposed. Its leaders, stripped of their authority and credibility, were apprehended, facing the legal ramifications of their deceit. Adriana, once the charismatic architect of their illusions, found herself utterly alone, abandoned by the very followers she had so expertly controlled. The carefully constructed facade crumbled, leaving her to confront the stark reality of her actions and the ruin she had wrought. In the aftermath, a profound sense of justice settled. It wasn't about causing pain, but about restoring balance, about ensuring that those who had been wronged found solace in the truth. The weight of their manipulation, the suffocating presence of their lies, began to lift. I could finally breathe freely, the chains of deception that had bound me for so long finally broken. The path forward, once obscured by shadows, now stretched out, clear and unburdened. This arduous journey, born from a desire for recompense, had ultimately transformed into an unexpected liberation. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes, confronting the darkness, even through the act of seeking justice, can lead to a profound and lasting freedom. The echoes of the past began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of peace and the anticipation of a future untainted by the shadows of what had been. The liberation was complete, a gentle dawn after a long and turbulent night. This transformative experience has irrevocably shaped me into a different person. I've learned the invaluable art of discernment, the necessity of constant questioning, and the wisdom of withholding blind faith from pronouncements. My resilience has been forged in the crucible of challenge, each hurdle surmounted reinforcing my inner fortitude. I now possess a clearer, more profound understanding of my inherent worth. Most significantly, I've discovered that truth, however obscured, will inevitably surface. If you find yourself navigating similar adversities, I implore you not to succumb to despair. Tap into your intellect, your innate creativity, and the wellspring of your inner strength to conquer these obstacles and forge ahead. Remember this: you are not a mere pawn in someone else's game, you are the architect of your own existence. Only you hold the pen to script the ultimate conclusion of your narrative. The lingering tendrils of past injustices, once so potent, now recede into a distant hum. The pursuit of retribution, which had initially set me on this path, unexpectedly yielded a far greater prize: genuine liberation. It's a stark reminder that sometimes, by directly confronting the shadows that have cast their pall, even in the quest for what is rightfully ours, we can find an emancipation that is both profound and enduring. The echoes of yesterday are gradually being replaced by a tranquil stillness, a quiet anticipation of a future unburdened by the specters of what once was. This freedom feels absolute, much like the gentle break of dawn following an extended period of tumultuous night. The world, once a complex web of perceived certainties, now appears in sharper relief. My interactions are now guided by a newfound clarity, a subtle awareness that allows me to navigate the intricacies of human connection with greater assurance. I no longer find myself swayed by superficial displays or hollow pronouncements. Instead, I seek authenticity, a genuine resonance that speaks to the core of understanding. This journey has bestowed upon me a priceless gift: the capacity to trust my own judgment, to rely on the instincts that have been honed through experience. It's a quiet power, one that doesn't seek to dominate or control, but rather to understand and to be understood. Looking ahead, the horizon stretches out, painted with the vibrant hues of possibility. There are no grand pronouncements to be made, no sweeping declarations of victory. Instead, there is a profound sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength discovered within. The future is not a destination to be reached, but a continuous unfolding, a series of moments to be lived with intention and purpose. Each sunrise is an invitation to continue building, to continue evolving, to continue embracing the fullness of my own narrative, one carefully chosen word at a time. The journey continues, not with the heavy burden of the past, but with the light tread of newfound wisdom.